Hello Fragcom, this is maxforti back at you with another Q&A part 2 this time. Thank you so much for all the questions that came through. I appreciate it. I had to break it in 2 parts because I didn't want it to be so long. First order of business, I just want to give you my scent of the day. I am so ecstatic and so happy with this release. So this is English Laundry's newest addition to their fragrance collection. This is Windsor. Stay tuned for my first impressions. All I have to say is that this is amazing. This was actually my scent of the day today. That's it for that. Stay tuned for the video. Let's jump right into the questions. The first question here from my good friend, fellow reviewer, RioCappuccino. What is your favorite fragrance ever worn? Okay, so my first fragrance ever worn, there's 2 of them because they were worn right about the same time frame. I think 2 years apart from each other. My very first fragrance was a Sour Pour Homme. My father gave me a little mini and I wore that and I really fell in love with that fragrance. You know, at times I would overindulge in that fragrance, but that was my first memory of a fragrance that I first wore. And I think I was about 6, 7 years old. And then there was another incident in 5th grade where I wore British Sterling and I just took a bath and I just was, removed from the class because I stunk. I just sprayed way too much in my clothes. So those are the stories of my first worn fragrances. Next question comes from another good friend of mine, fellow reviewer, 8RK7, Raj. How you doing, Raj? How are those Arsenal doing this year, huh? So he asks, which country do you think makes the best fragrances? So I think that it's definitely between France or Italy. And I think that the Middle East has really taken a huge stride. I think from the late 80s, early 90s, up until about 5 years ago, they really exploded into the fragrance world. And I think that Europe has to really continue to, put out quality products and really watch out for the competition, which I think is fierce right now. At one time, somebody asked me, when do you think was the best, time for fragrances? I think it's right now. I think everyone is really, as far as like the market is concerned, it's just exploding. There's fragrances being released all over the world, and there's more houses coming up, left and right. And again, if I had to pick one, I think France is still the #1 best country, that produces the best fragrances in the world. But I think they have to watch out because, there's a lot of different markets, arising, and I think that, the best will, yet to be seen. But I think France still has the upper hand and has been the best fragrance market ever. So next question here comes from King Meta, and he asks me, how do you manage to acquire fragrances you sell, and how do you sell them at such great, price point? Where do you get them from? Okay, very nice question, great question. He also asked me, he says he's always interested in, knowing how I do it. Thank you so much for the kind words. He says he loves the channel. So first of all, I don't want this question to be so long, but basically it's something that I've, touched upon a few times that people PM'd me or asked me through Facebook. Very simple. The one word to sum it up, it's surplus. Manufacturers are making these fragrances for these houses, and they send these fragrances to different distribution points in America and all over the world. What happens is, these companies need to get a certain price per bottle, and they do that, and everything that is above and beyond that becomes surplus. And because these distribution companies need to meet certain quotas, they have to sell and distribute a certain amount of bottles, they become available at a much better price. So I am affiliated with a couple distribution companies in America, and what happens is these fragrances become available to me at a cost price. And with that price, I am glad to pass it on to the Fragcom as a fragrance community member and fragrance lover myself. It is with great pleasure that I'm able to offer these fragrances at such great prices for the fragrance community. The margin that I work with is about 3 to 5% depending on the fragrance, which is really not much. By the time you pay fees and shipping, it's really an amount that's symbolical. But the true thing here is to really help the fragrance community and be able to, offer great fragrances for great prices. So I hope that answers your question. The next question here comes from NW supporters RD bags. Again, your name's going to appear here with your question as we go forth. Which of your fragrances was the one that inspired you to collect? By the way, I'm very happy with your services and the fragrance provider, top-notch seller, blah, blah, blah. He recently purchased Creed's Original Santal. I hope you're enjoying that fragrance. And so basically, the fragrance that inspired me to collect was right around mid-90s when I first got my nose on the original Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme. Before then, at any given time, I had 2 to 3 fragrances that I would rotate. But right around that time, 95-ish, I smelled Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme, the original vintage edition, the one that's made in Italy. And that just opened my mind, and I know a lot of people know how much I love that fragrance. And back in those days, there used to be a Perfumania in the mall that I used to frequent, and I used to know the essays very well. And I started buying fragrances like crazy. And a year later, and from that point on, I had about 30 to 40 fragrances that I would rotate constantly throughout the year, throughout the different weather and seasons. So, Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme, the vintage edition, was definitely the one that started it all for me. That's why it's so near and dear to my heart, as well as the Zara Pour Homme. Now, next question comes from Enoc, Guadalupe. He asks, what's the worst fragrance you ever put your nose on? That's pretty easy to answer. It has to be from Eta Orange Libre, Secretions Magnifique. That fragrance, it's art in a bottle for sure. It's something that was, really artistically made, but the notes are so weirdly mashed, and the kind of sense, the kind of a scent that it evokes, it's just repugnant to my nose. It's something that I really can't wear, but it's definitely the worst fragrance I've ever smelled. I think anything else, even if it's through an animalic, I might be able to pull off, but Secretions Magnifique, I can't do it. So that's that. Next question comes from Walther P99BG. He asks, what are your top 5 plum fragrances? That's pretty easy because plum is just so happens to be one of my favorite notes in perfumery. And I'm going to give you the 5. It's Chambre Noir by Olfactive Studio, Plum Japonese by Tom Ford, Private Blend, Bond Number 9 Andy Warhol, which is a combination of oud and plum, just made to perfection. It's one of the best. Gold Leather from Atelier Cologne, which if you haven't gotten your noses in it, definitely need to try it. It's really good fragrance. Last but not least, John Varvatos, whatever you want to call it, the Self-Entitled. It's just really good. I just wish it projected and lasted longer. Actually, longevity is not that bad on my skin. Just projection, it dies after the first 2.5 hours or so. Next question comes from Sazha Faisal. I hope I'm not butchering your name. He says, hi, I want you to recommend 3 men's fragrances for special occasions, marriages, weddings, for upscale events with good longevity and projection. Thank you. Okay, I think Olfactive Studio Chambre Noir will do that very well. I think Amouage's Jubilation 25 will do that phenomenally. And last but not least, I think Creed's Spice and Wood will do that very well. So I think these 3 are my picks for upscale events. Next question comes from Patrick Echevarria. He asks, Max, would you agree that fragrance is more than just a hobby? It's an addiction too. I myself couldn't believe that in a single month alone, I bought 15 designer and a couple of niche fragrances in one shot. Okay, so he asks, it seems like you're always wanting more. Okay, that's a great question. This is a question that oftentimes I get asked. And absolutely, fragrance is definitely addictive. It is something that, especially if you are a fragrance lover, such as myself, such as you guys that are watching this, we have a tendency to want a fragrance for every occasion. We watch a video, we watch, something that piques our interest, we're going to want to blind buy it. We're going to want to get our noses on it. But, I think the key here is balance, trying to find an equilibrium, a balance of, not overindulging, because it can become a problem, financially, that is. But other than that, it's a great hobby, and fragrances do inspire the emotions. It evokes memories, situations, people, a certain time of our lives. It's just such a beautiful thing that you can't help but become so attached and addicted, addicted to fragrances. I'm a living proof. Fragrance addict right here. Next question comes from Shane D. Where do you store your collection? Okay, Shane, I know Shane very well. How you doing, bud? So, Shane, basically I have a curio, a real nice big curio furniture that I keep most of my collection. There's about a good 200 plus in there. And then I have 2 smaller, fragrance cases that I keep about 75 to 100 pieces in each. And I have a smaller cooler that I keep, you know, the rarer, you know, most expensive fragrance, just to make sure they're very well kept in a good temperature, and so forth and so on. But for the most part, I have the Curio and the two fragrance cases that I keep most of my fragrances. So I hope that answers your question. Next question comes from D. Rum, and he asks, do you have any fragrances from the past year that you would consider underrated? Absolutely. I think 2015 was a really good year for fragrances. We had a lot of underrated fragrances that people don't really talk much about. There's one in particular that was really one of my favorite releases, which was Tom Ford Noir Extreme. I have a full review on it if you'd like to watch. Now it's, you know, over the past couple of months, it's really gaining some interest, but it's really great fragrance, especially for this time of the year, fall and winter. Cheyenne Blue, London Framboise Noir. Unbelievable fragrance. And last but not least, Azzaro Pour Homme Intense, which I think is phenomenal. Definitely need to try it out if you guys haven't. But I think those are my 3 picks that come to mind for underrated from last year. Next question comes from Nicholas Ford. He asks, how many fragrances do you own? All right, Nicholas, so basically I own anywhere from 400 to 450 fragrances. The number fluctuates a little bit because every month, as you watch my sale and swap thread, I not only on sale and swap threads, but throughout each month, you know, throughout the 30 days of the month, I usually buy or swap or I gain some fragrances in my collection, but I get rid of some fragrances as well. So that number is usually around the 400, 450, anywhere in that vicinity it falls at any given time. It has gone below 400 at some points, but it's right around that mark. All right. Last but not least, here the last question is from Fragrance Lover, and he asks, what are the 3 fragrances, niche and designer, you personally love on yourself and that you think women love the most on you? So, and by women, my wife. So I'm going to give you 3 of each, 3 designer and 3 niche, okay? So the 3 designer that I love on myself and I think women, my wife, you know, they really like the way I smell, I would say Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme, the vintage, obviously. Paco Rabanne 1 Million. I know I'm going to get flack for that, but it smells great on my skin and I get a lot of compliments. So it has, I got to be honest here. It's one of my most complimented. I like the way it smells on me and people like the way I smell. So last but not least, Dior Homme Intense. I think these are the 3 that garners the most compliments and I really enjoy the way they smell on me. And then the niche ones would be Tom Ford's Tobacco Vanille in their more cooler weather. Amouage's Reflection Man, which you can always wear all year round, great fragrance. And last but not least, Creed Aventus, Crowd Pleaser. So these are my picks, and I hope I answered all your questions properly. I will be doing this again in about a year and a half's time, as time permits. But, you know, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for all the questions. I really appreciate it. And 3 announcements at the end of this video. Right now, I'm going to ask you to please join me, join the fragrance fun at my Facebook group, which is called, it's going to appear right here, and I'm going to put it on the description box as well. It's called Emporium of Scents Fragcom. Also, follow me on Instagram. It's also going to appear here and at the description box. And last but not least, follow me on Twitter. I recently joined Twitter. I'm really, you know, liking it, and I hope to see you all there. Thank you so much. This is Max Forti. Until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.